joining today's podcast. We're talking all around the cost of not. So I think, Andrea, you and I have been speaking a fair bit over the last few weeks around one of the things that we'd like to achieve from the series, which is talking around the essentially things that might be considered to be value add or a little bit different to kind of standard, sort of blueprint how you might do things from a strategic talent perspective. And then turning it on its head almost and thinking, well, what would happen if we didn't do something like that? So we'll explore that as we move through the conversation. But I don't know if you want to just introduce yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Andrea Marston. I have been a global talent acquisition leader at VMware most recently. I left there a couple of months ago now after the Broadcom acquisition, and so really what I want to talk about is some of the stuff that we did at VMware in the last couple of years, but I've also worked at a number of other tech companies like Workday, Oracle, Huddle, etc.
I think what we were quite keen to get out of the podcast and to explore with you is just, something that's explores a little bit about what you might have done that's been a little bit different, that has addressed something that might have kind of come up as a result of those challenges, or at least is something that is going to perhaps impact the way that you do things a little bit differently, but might offer some inspiration to those in your peer group. And then we'll flip it and think, well, what actually could be the kind of commercial cost perhaps if you hadn't have done that. So with that in mind, would you like to introduce what you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, so I think like a lot of other companies, we'd gone through the pandemic, we'd gone through all that change there. We were actually hiring a lot through that period. And then as we started to come out of that in 2022, there was the announcement that Broadcom were acquiring VMware as well. So that was a whole ton of change that was coming to us, but we didn't know how long that was going to be. And it did take 18 months for that acquisition to happen. So we need to keep the business going, but at the same time, be really careful about what kind of investments we were making or anything like that. So lots and lots of change over about 4 years. And so what we brought in was quite a modest idea initially of being able to rotate some staff around. So being able to take some TA people from one part of the TA team and put them in somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And just to be able to cope with things like spikes of hiring where there might be, we're not going to be hiring as many salespeople for the next 6 months because that's tended to happen at the beginning of the year. So let's move them into perhaps tech support hiring or something like that. Or it might be another region that needs more people. So the idea was just to put people where we needed them most, mm-hmm. and to increase the amount of agility and flexibility within the team. But the add-on was we were also going to give people that opportunity to be learning about a new area or a new region as well. So there was, something in it for everyone.
And was that was globally, was it?
Yeah, it was global. And, initially we set ourselves a target, I think, of doing 3 in 6 months.
How many did you end with?
80. So, yeah, well, 80 in 9 months, but it clearly did work, and it hit a point where we realised that it was something that we did need. And it got a lot broader than that as well. So it ended up not just being about putting TA people in other parts of the TA organisation. We actually had TA people working in other parts of HR, but mm-hmm. also things like the office of the CEO, deal management team, into support roles as well. So very different types of roles that we were able to slot TA people into, and really showcasing the transferable skills they had, giving people that opportunity to go and try something new, but also add value where they were. And I think, there was a few things that really stood out for me was if TA wasn't that busy, and so we had excess people, we had that bandwidth, it generally meant other parts of the business were a little bit stretched because mm-hmm. they weren't hiring. So they were more than happy to get the help from someone to come in and work with them for the next 3 months, possibly up to 6 months. So it really helped other parts of the business out. at a net neutral cost, because of course they were still being paid for by TA.
And what was the response from the TA team for all of this? How did you find the appetite?
Yeah, so there's always a few people that are always ready to jump in and try anything, right? We all have those. So, they were the ones that jumped in first, went, yeah, give me that, I want to get into it. And that was fantastic to see, but we did have them talk about the opportunity with the rest of TA in our all hands, which really helped for people to see this is a value, what they've learned, how much value they got from both sides of it. They're getting that opportunity to learn something new, but they're also getting that opportunity to come back and share their experiences as well. There was a lot more talk of an understanding of what different people are doing. Initially, we had not enough capacity in the sourcing team in one area, and we had too much capacity for the talent advisors. And there is, in some areas, that feeling of, oh, that's a more junior role, I don't want to go and do that. I don't want to go and do this. And by actually talking to people about, if they go and spend those 3 months in sourcing, they're going to be improving their sourcing skills, which you still need as a full life cycle recruiter. So it's not about taking a more junior role, it's about getting the opportunity to hone your skills, doing a different role. Likewise, people knew that they didn't want to go and work in employer branding, for example, for long term, but to get the chance to go and work on an employer branding project for 3 months, that's adding your skills, it's giving you that extra line on your CV.
Particularly in a company of that size, it's something you wouldn't necessarily get to touch as much otherwise, wouldn't it? No, exactly.
I mean, we did have some people that ended up getting hired into their new roles. So that's always nice to see, and you're getting people, like there was one, she'd been a recruiter for quite a while, maybe 5 years at least at VMware, and she ended up moving into employee relations, and it was like, that's kind of
pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think particularly because, like you said earlier when you were kind of introducing it, you had that whole wave during 2021, 22 where the TA market was office rocker, wasn't it? Everyone was hiring and teams grew quite significantly. So I think that the time that we've had in the last couple of years has been particularly difficult for those in TA that are experiencing the knock-on effects of that dialing back down quite a lot. And I think, at least from those that I'm speaking with that have, maybe they've come from IC roles or maybe they've come from leadership, but I think the general thread of people who are out of work, I think the frustration is around not being able to kind of exercise their skill sets. I think, famously recruiters are a ambitious bunch that like doing things. It's I think there's quite a lot of people that would probably chomp at the bit to do something like what you've introduced, be able to kind of work hard but in another business area and gain more capability there as well. And then if they want to pivot back into doing the TA.
But it hits so many of those things that everyone is talking about in talent. It's, we want to be looking at talent more holistically anyway. So we want to be thinking about the talent that we have in an organisation, how we can move them around. And this is a really pragmatic approach to dealing with all those key things that everyone's talking about, such as talent density. How do we increase the amount of talent that we have in our individuals? How do we fix internal mobility when people aren't actually ready for that internal role, rather than just always going outside? And it gives that opportunity to people, it's a bit of try before you buy. It sounds really rubbish, but giving people that, that can they upskill? Is this something that people want to do longer term? It also helps with things like retention at the end of the day. If someone is a little bit bored, they're waiting for the right role to come up, rather than them being a target for other companies, they can be kept internally with a project for a while until they're ready for that opportunity, or until they're growing their skills in whatever area it might be.
Yeah. How did you decide who went where? Was it kind of...
Yeah, so we wanted to keep it really simple, right? Because we didn't have, in an ideal world, we would have built an amazing platform that people could plug into. But given that we were doing this with really no budget, we built, I had one person in my team who was running the whole start of this, and and putting the whole practice in place. And so she put together the very simple form, effectively, that, okay, here's what the information we need on the role that you're offering for the person that has the opportunity, and then also this is how you need to apply.
So people might find that they're in, kind of being targeted towards somewhere that feel they've got a say in and are interested in kind of the area of the business.
Yeah, so the key thing we wanted to do was make sure that people had the opportunity to apply. We weren't restricting people. And every company's always got that problem where if someone's good, their manager just wants to hold on to them, they don't want to release them. And this solved that problem, because we always come up against that in internal mobility. But with this, we had to keep reiterating that to the managers as well. If you let your best person go, and go and hone their skills, you've probably got more chance of retaining them in the future for a start. But also you can backfill them with someone else. You can bring in someone else as well. So we're not stopping you letting someone go and then you think, oh, I've got to cover for them and we're really busy. If someone wants to go and do it, let them. And I think it gave people that opportunity to just be a little bit more flexible about letting their people go, trying something new, bringing in someone with different skills. And it was amazing how many people say, I can't believe how amazing they are. That's such a perfect fit for them. This is, we've learned so much. There's been, so much sharing of ideas because all these different teams are doing things slightly differently and everyone has got something to share.
It's a nice energy against the background of M&A change as well, isn't it? 'Cause it's quite a time, isn't it?
Yeah.
To go through. Nice to kind of have the energy of like collaboration and learning.
Yeah. Yeah, because especially in that last year, we couldn't really do things like promotions and things like that. That would have been the wrong thing to do because we knew that the TA function as such was going to disappear because Broadcom have a very different operating model and they don't have TA. So, as we would call it, and so we needed people to stay motivated, but also to stay learning. What was the point of them? We didn't want people just sitting there treading water. We wanted people to be learning and growing, mentoring others, learning from others, and sharing those ideas. So there was a lot around that piece that I feel really worked for people, and I see how many of them have now moved into new roles and sharing those ideas that they learned. And I think everyone can broaden their experiences. I think Helen Tuffer calls it squiggly careers. Have you heard of this? The squiggly careers? So the idea is you're not on a career ladder anymore, but you have squiggly careers. I love that term. Yeah. So
that's how it should
idea.
be.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the career ladder is such a dated idea. So the more that we can encourage people to grow and develop without necessarily having a promotion, I think is
or doing kind of full-scale career change as well, because sometimes you might be interested in a particular area and to have the opportunity to be able to go in and kind of learn about that. Maybe you want to then go back into what you were doing before, but you've had the opportunity to see, which is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of that in my early career, which was trying out new things, going, that's not actually for me. It looked like a great idea. It looked really exciting from outside. And then you get into it and go, maybe not me, is it? No. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. How did the business take to it all?
Yeah. Really good. I mean, initially we were just thinking TA, and then it was the business coming to us saying, could we do this? Could we be part of this?
It's kind of a good programme, that, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it was. And then, coming out after and saying that was a tremendous help for us. That was something that we wanted to, we'd love to do again. And I think I definitely saw more potential in the idea as well. And I think if things had not changed, if we hadn't gone through the acquisition, then I could see that broadening out into much more of a programme. I definitely have got a vision of how this could work, to really bring together talent much more holistically. And I think, this is possibly that missing piece that we always have between talent acquisition and learning and development. This is the piece that if we can bring it all together on one platform and give people that opportunity, it starts to solve the internal mobility issue and the retention issue that a lot of organisations have.
I love that, because I think when we've kind of so many of us are talking at the moment about what the view is of the future, and against kind of being probably in a bit of a rut at the moment, but against a backdrop of, well, actually there's so many problems to solve and there's so much that's changing that's going to impact these roles, like AI and thinking about kind of getting ahead in the skills race and future work and all of these different things. It's really cool to kind of hear you thinking about that, and how the role's going to change into the future too, because it's 5 years time. I'd be quite interested to see what the function looks like, particularly as relates to kind of the talent integration and such.
Yeah, we've been talking about things like talent density, skills-based hiring, the gig economy, and it's all felt a little bit disparate and not connected in the right areas. And this really highlights me that if we all start thinking maybe a little bit more creatively about some of the things that we're trying to fix, what can we do that it's not going to fix all of it, but it's certainly going to start targeting these areas. And I think HR as a whole needs to just think a little bit differently in the future about how we're going to work with our talent, because breaking it up into all these different areas is not working.
Mm-hmm. And thinking about all of this then, so you kind of told us about the programme and how it was received and some of the kind of cool stuff that's come off the back of it, so thank you for that. Quite simply, what do you think would be the impact if you didn't do any of that? What would be... What would have happened?
Yeah, it's actually quite easy to answer that, because it's really a situation that we were in perhaps a couple of years before that, which was we end up with parts of the TA team that are massively under-resourced, and then we're desperately trying to hire people to hire into that particular area, or we have too many TA people and we then think, okay, we need to reduce our contractors and we need to shift what we have, and then 6 months later we end up trying to hire a load more people again. So we go through that whole process. And other times people have been trying to fix that with, okay, we'll bring in an RPO, that's going to be a shorter route, but typically it takes too long to ramp up a TA person by going through that seesaw effect too much. So we would have had retention issues. It's also hurts people to see if half your team has been laid off, so definitely would have affected attrition. I think also we wouldn't have seen such great partnership with the business. I think it really helped improve partnership with different parts of the business where we had TA people working so closely with them. They've really got it.
Yeah.
So that was very strong as well.
It's interesting there, some of the main things that you've kind of said that you were able to avoid by doing that, as some of the main things that have come up as the problem pieces more recently.
Yeah.
Across the board, particularly with organisations of that size.
Yeah. And I think to a lesser degree you could do this in a smaller company as well. There's always the problems that I'm talking about are not just in the tech industry, they're not just in large enterprises, they're quite common across the board really. So yes, the actual way it's put together might be different, but the problems exist the same.
It's a lot to take forward then, all of this, isn't it? And I think it was quite interesting what you alluded to earlier, the real fluctuation that you tend to see, that cycle of, okay, we're scaling now, so we're going to bring in, all of this headcount, and we're now, we're in a downwards ebb, so we're either, restructuring or, we're just kind of got a team that are sitting pretty quiet and not necessarily doing as much, and then we might onboard an RPO, we might scale up, and, the cycle continues, and it's something that is, for many that I speak with, I think seen as that kind of inevitable, it's always going to be these cycles, but actually I think, if anything, that this last, the kind of COVID onwards has showed is quite how impactful that is, particularly if you've got the cycles coming in shorter waves. You've got people that have experienced really, rough ground with with the roles that they've been in, and the impact of that. So I think it's particularly for something that's been cost neutral, very impactful against that, and actually solving some of the problems that, as I say, I think is often seen as a given. Well, that was all very informative. Thank you, Andrea. I actually learned a lot, and I think I find it really interesting when I get to speak to people like yourself that have such a wealth of experience, but also thinking quite creatively about how can we do things differently, how are we keeping in line with kind of future trends and such. So I've personally found that to be very valuable, and I think probably I would imagine most people that are listening to this would also think so. Particularly just from a point of inspiration, and just to hear how other people are dealing with the same challenges that I think most are experiencing. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Oh, you're welcome, and hope it helps other people just come up with their own ideas.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Amazing. Thank you.